The stars looked different from inside the Galactic Concordat station. Captain stood in the waiting chamber and watched them through the massive windows. Each star represented a world, a civilization, a story that stretched back thousands of years. Earth was new to all of this. Too new, perhaps. "They're ready for us," Doctor said softly. She stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back. She looked calm but knew her well enough to see the tension in her shoulders. Ambassador Park joined them at the window. He was older than both of them, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many difficult negotiations. "Remember," he said quietly, "we speak for all of humanity today. Choose your words carefully." The doors opened with a sound like wind chimes. The council chamber beyond was enormous. Had seen pictures, but pictures couldn't capture the reality of it. The room stretched upward into darkness, and floating in that darkness were thousands of holographic forms. Every species in the Concordat was watching. Every civilization that had bent the knee to the ancients was here to see what the humans would do. At the center of it all, 5 pillars of light towered above everything else. The Council of Ancients. They had no bodies anymore, just pure energy held together by technology so advanced it looked like magic. Each one was a different color, shifting and pulsing with an inner light. Walked forward within. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space. When they reached the center, they stopped. Tried not to feel small, but it was impossible. He was just a man standing before beings that had lived for millions of years. The voice that filled the chamber didn't come from any direction. It simply existed, vibrating through the air and through his bones. "Humanity, you stand before the council." "We are honored," Ambassador said, bowing slightly. "You should not be." The voice was cold. "We have watched your species for 50 of your years. We have seen what you do. We have reached a decision. Stepped forward, if we may." "You may not." The purple pillar of light grew brighter. "You will listen. For 100,000 years we have maintained peace in this galaxy. 10,000 species live under our guidance. They are safe. They are happy. They are protected from themselves and from each other. And we are grateful for the opportunity to join such a community," said carefully. "You misunderstand." The red pillar pulsed. "You are not joining anything. You are being judged." Felt his jaw tighten. He forced himself to stay quiet. This was job, not his. The voice continued. "In 50 years, your kind has been involved in 3 territorial disputes with other species. You have refused to adopt standardized technology protocols. You have built warships when you were advised to build research vessels. You expand too quickly. You question too much. You do not follow guidance." "We follow our own path," said, unable to stay silent any longer. "Is that a crime?" "It is a warning sign." The blue pillar spoke now, its voice somehow gentler but no less firm. "We have seen your pattern before. Aggressive species, expansionist species, species that believe they are special, that they are different, that the rules do not apply to them. Do you know what happens to such species, Doctor?" Lifted her chin. "They thrive. They destroy themselves, or worse, they destroy others." The green pillar brightened. "We will not permit it, not again, not after what we have seen." "What have you seen?" asked, breaking his silence. "War, genocide. Entire civilizations turned to ash because they were too proud to accept limits." The voice filled with something that might have been sadness. "We have lived through the dark ages of this galaxy. We have seen planets burn. We will not see it again." Ambassador took a deep breath. "What are you asking of us?" "We are not asking." The 5 pillars pulsed in unison. "We are commanding. Humanity will reduce its military fleet by 90%. You will submit all technological development to Concordat oversight. You will accept guardian advisors on every human world. These advisors will guide your education, your research, your cultural development. You will learn to be peaceful." The chamber was completely silent, could hear his own heartbeat. 90% of their fleet, oversight of all technology, Guardians on every world. It wasn't protection, it was control. It was the end of human freedom. And if we refuse? Asked quietly. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. The 5 pillars grew brighter, and for a moment could feel the weight of their power pressing down on him like a physical force. No species has refused the council in 100,000 years, the voice said. There is a reason for that. You have 1 Earth year to comply. We suggest you use it wisely. The audience was over. The doors opened behind them and knew they were being dismissed. He wanted to argue, to shout, to demand that these ancient beings explain by what right they claim to rule humanity, but's hand on his arm stopped him. They walked out in silence. The doors closed behind them with that same wind chime sound, and suddenly they were just 3 humans standing in a corridor, facing an impossible choice. They're afraid of us, said finally. Looked at her, what? Think about it, why give us a warning at all? Why not just force compliance? They're powerful enough to do it. She shook her head slowly. They're afraid of what we might become. Or they're afraid of what we already are, said softly. He looked old suddenly, tired in a way had never seen before. We need to get home. We need to tell Earth what's coming. They boarded their ship, the Defiant Dawn, and set course for home. As they jumped to faster-than-light speed, stood on the bridge and watched the Concordat station disappear behind them. Somewhere in that station, 5 beings made of light believed they were protecting the galaxy, but couldn't shake words. They were afraid, and that fear was about to change everything. The journey home would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to figure out what to tell humanity. 3 weeks to decide the future of their entire species. 3 weeks before Earth would have to choose between freedom and survival. Didn't sleep much on that journey. None of them did. They went over every word the ancients had said, looking for loopholes, for options, for any way out. But the message was clear. Submit or face consequences that no species had ever been willing to face. When Earth finally appeared in there, beautiful and blue against the black of space, felt something heavy settle in his chest. 1 year. That's all they had. 1 year to decide what it meant to be human. The debate had been going on for 6 months, and Earth was tearing itself apart. Premier Hen stood at the window of her office in Geneva and watched the protesters below. Half of them carried signs demanding compliance with the ancients. The other half burned effigies of the council and shouted about human freedom. Between them, police in riot gear tried to keep the peace. It was the same scene in every major city on Earth and every colony throughout the solar system. Madam Premier, they're ready for you, her assistant said from the doorway. Nodded and straightened her jacket. The United Earth Government Assembly was about to vote. After 6 months of arguing, after countless debates and fights and compromises, it all came down to this: submit to the ancients or stand alone. The assembly hall was packed. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every major corporation and organization sat in their seats, waiting, walked to the podium and looked out at them. These people would decide humanity's future today. Before we vote, she said, her voice carrying through the chamber, I want to hear once more from those who have studied this question most closely. Doctor, please share your findings. Stood and walked to the center of the floor. She looked thinner than she had 6 months ago. They all did. The weight of this decision was crushing them all slowly. I've spent 6 months studying every species in the Concordat, said. I've analyzed their histories, their cultures, their technological development, and I've found something disturbing. Every single species under Concordat protection has stopped growing. She brought up a holographic display. Charts and graphs filled the air above the assembly floor. Look at the 3,000 years ago they were master engineers building incredible structures. Today they build nothing new. They maintain what the ancients gave them, but they don't innovate. They were once explorers, always pushing into new space. They haven't left their home system in 800 years. The pattern is the same everywhere: safety, comfort, stagnation. But they're alive, someone called out from the assembly. They're not at war, their people are happy. Are they? His voice was sharp. Or have they just forgotten what it means to want more? The ancients don't just control military development, they control education. They approve research. They guide cultural development. In the name of peace, they've created a galaxy of children who will never grow up. Admiral Song stood next. He was in full uniform, his chest covered in medals from the various conflicts Earth had survived. I have intelligence that supports Doctor's conclusions, he said. My officers have made discreet contact with several Concordat species. When we ask them about their history, about their achievements, they can tell us what happened thousands of years ago. But they can't tell us what they've done recently, because they haven't done anything. He paused, letting that sink in. The ancients claim their guardians are advisors, but here's what those advisors actually do. They sit in on every government meeting. They approve or reject every new law. They review every school curriculum. They monitor every research project. Some call it guidance. I call it control. A representative from the European Union stood. But what choice do we have? The ancients have technology we can't match. They have the support of 10,000 species. If we refuse, they'll crush us. Maybe, Song admitted, but I'd rather die free than live as a pet. The chamber erupted into shouting. Half the assembly cheered. The other half shouted him down. Let it go on for a moment before calling for order. We have one more speaker, she said. Minyu Li, representing the Mars colonies. Minyu was young, barely 30, with the lean build of someone who had grown up in low gravity. He walked to the center of the floor without notes, without displays, with nothing but his voice. My grandparents left Korea, he said quietly. The chamber slowly quieted to hear him. They left everything they knew because they wanted something more. They got on a ship and crossed an ocean to build a new life. My parents did the same thing, except their ocean was space. They left Earth for Mars because they believed in something. They believed that humans should never stop reaching for more. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of the representatives. If we accept the ancients' terms, everything they sacrificed means nothing. We become a species that accepts limits. We become a species that says, this far and no farther. Is that what humans are? Is that what we want to be? The chamber was silent now. I'm not saying the choice is easy, Minyu continued. I'm not saying people won't die if we refuse, but I am saying that if we accept these terms, something else dies. The part of us that crossed oceans, the part that built rockets, the part that looked at the stars and said, yes, we can reach them. That part dies and we become something else, something safe, something small. He sat down, the silence stretched on. Premier Han took the podium again. The vote is called. All those in favor of accepting the ancients' terms. Hands went up across the chamber, counted them, her face showing nothing. All those in favor of refusing. More hands, counted again. The margin was razor thin, but it was there. The assembly has decided, we refuse. The chamber exploded into noise. Some cheered, some wept, some sat in stunned silence, unable to believe what had just happened. Waited for quiet. When it came, she said, I will personally deliver our response to the Concordat. We will tell them that humanity appreciates their concern, but we must walk our own path. We will tell them that we mean no harm to any species, but we will not surrender our freedom. And then we will prepare for whatever comes next. She turned to Admiral Song. How long until you can have the fleet ready? It's already ready, Madam Premier, he said quietly. I've been preparing since the day we heard the ultimatum. Allowed herself a small smile. Of course you have. The response was sent that night. It was polite, respectful, and absolutely final. Humanity would not comply. The ancients' response came 18 hours later. Not words, not threats, not another ultimatum. A fleet, 10,000 ships, each one massive and terrible and beautiful, appeared at the edge of the solar system. They didn't attack. They didn't communicate. They simply moved into position around Earth, Mars, Venus, and every human colony. The siege had begun. Admiral Song stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the Concordat fleet take up positions. He had 187 ships under his command, 187 against 10,000. "Well," he said to his officers, "I suppose we'd better get creative." On Earth, Premier Han stood at her window and watched the sky. She couldn't see the Concordat fleet from here, but she knew they were up there. She had just condemned her species to war against an enemy they couldn't defeat. But they could try. That was the human thing to do. When faced with impossible odds, humans tried anyway. She turned away from the window. There was work to do. The first battle lasted 11 minutes. Admiral Song lost 14 ships and barely scratched the Concordat fleet's shields. It was a disaster. "Pull back," he ordered, watching his tactical display with growing horror. The Concordat vessels were massive, each one protected by energy barriers that absorbed every weapon humans threw at them. Their return fire was worse. When a Concordat beam hit a human ship, the vessel didn't just explode. It came apart at the molecular level, breaking down into clouds of atoms that drifted away like smoke. "Sir, the Beijing is gone. The Cairo is venting atmosphere. The Mumbai is—" The tactical officer stopped, her voice breaking. "I see it, Lieutenant," Song said quietly. He watched another ship vanish from his display. 15 now. 15 ships and over 3,000 people gone in the first 11 minutes of the war. They limped back behind Mars. The Concordat fleet didn't pursue. They didn't need to. They had made their point. This wasn't going to be a war. It was going to be an execution. But Song had learned something in those 11 minutes. The Concordat ships moved in perfect formation. They followed precise attack patterns. Their tactics were flawless, textbook perfect, and that was their weakness. "Get me Commander Sara," he ordered. Sara commanded a small group of frigates, light and fast ships that weren't meant for combat against capital vessels. She appeared on his screen, her face smudged with soot from a fire somewhere on her ship. "Sir, I need you to do something crazy," Song said. "How crazy?" "Against all military doctrine crazy." Sara smiled grimly. "Those are my favorite kind of orders, sir." 3 days later, Sara led her frigate group on what should have been a suicide run. The Concordat had blockaded Venus, cutting off the colony there from supplies. Sora's mission was to break through. But she didn't attack the blockade head-on. Instead, she led her ships into the sun's corona, hiding in the massive solar flares that the Concordat sensors couldn't penetrate. Her ships' hulls glowed red from the heat, and several crew members passed out from heat exhaustion even with the cooling systems on maximum. But they got through. They emerged behind the Concordat line and launched every missile they had, not at the enemy ships, but at the solar collection arrays the Concordat fleet was using to power its shields. Then they ran, not away but deeper into the gravity well, using Venus itself as a shield. The Concordat fleet tried to follow textbook tactics for pursuit, but there was no textbook for what Sara was doing. She vented atmosphere to create false heat signatures. She used mining explosives to crack asteroids and fill the space with debris. She flew patterns that would have gotten her court-martialed in peacetime because they endangered her own ships. And it worked. 3 Concordat vessels collided trying to follow her through an asteroid field. The blockade broke long enough for supply ships to reach Venus. News of Sara's victory spread through the human forces. It gave them hope. Not much, but enough. Engineer was working on a different kind of hope. He was part of a secret team trying to find weaknesses in Concordat technology. They had recovered wreckage from the destroyed ships and were studying it in a hidden base on one of Jupiter's moons. "It's all quantum entangled," explained to Admiral Song over a secure channel. "Their ships communicate through quantum networks, supposedly." "Supposedly?" Song asked. The thing about quantum systems is they're based on probabilities, not certainties, said, his eyes bright with the manic energy of someone who hadn't slept in days. And the Concordat code is old. I mean really old. Thousands of years old. It's been patched and updated, but the core architecture dates back to before they became energy beings. Can you break it? I can do better. I can confuse it. Brought up a screen full of equations. If I introduce certain logical paradoxes into their network, the system will try to resolve them. It's how it's programmed. But these particular paradoxes can't be resolved. The system will keep trying, using more and more processing power until... Until what? Until something breaks. Maybe the shields, maybe the weapons, maybe just the communications. I won't know until we try it. Song looked at the equations. He didn't understand them, but he understood risk. How do we deliver this virus? We need to get close, really close, inside their shield perimeter. Song smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. I think I know someone who's good at getting close. Captain stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn and looked at his crew. They all knew what this mission was. They all knew the chances of survival were nearly zero. None of them had volunteered to leave. The plan is simple, said. We're going to ram the Concordat flagship. His crew stared at him. Well, we're going to look like we're going to ram it, he corrected. This virus is loaded into a specially designed missile. We fly straight at them, fast enough that they can't shoot us down easily. At the last second, we release the missile. It punches through their shield and delivers the virus directly into their systems. And then, his pilot asked, and then we pray the virus works fast enough to drop their shields before we hit them. If it does, we peel off and the fleet behind us opens fire. If it doesn't, he shrugged, well, we'll go down fighting. The attack came at dawn, Earth time. The Defiant Dawn accelerated toward the Concordat flagship at maximum burn. Klaxons wailed on the enemy ship. Weapons systems locked on. Energy built up in their primary cannon. Steady, said. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. On the Concordat flagship grew larger and larger. Sir, they're firing. Evasive pattern Delta. The ship rolled and twisted, dodging the massive energy beams that cut through space around them. One beam grazed their port side, and half the ship's systems went red. Keep going, ordered. They were close now, so close he could see individual structures on the Concordat ship, so close that pulling up was no longer an option. Release the missile. The missile shot forward, faster than any projectile humans had ever made. It hit the Concordat shield and the shield flickered, just for a moment, just for 3.7 seconds. But 3.7 seconds was enough. All ships fire, Admiral Song's voice came over the channel. Behind the Defiant Dawn, 50 human warships opened up with everything they had. Missiles, plasma cannons, everything. The weapons struck the Concordat flagship's hull directly. The ship didn't explode. It simply broke. A kilometer-long vessel torn apart by human weapons. Debris scattered across space, glowing from the heat of impact. On the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, his crew sat in stunned silence. Did we just, someone said. We did, said. He felt numb. For the first time since the war began, humans had destroyed an ancient vessel. But his triumph was short-lived. The tactical display showed the truth. One Concordat ship destroyed, 9,999 remaining, and now they were angry. The Concordat fleet stopped holding back. They began systematically destroying human positions throughout the solar system. The colony on Titan went silent. The mining stations in the asteroid belt vanished. The siege tightened around Earth itself. Humanity had drawn blood, but they were still losing, and time was running out. The war had been going on for 8 months, and Earth was dying. Doctor stood in the underground research facility hidden in the belt and watched the latest casualty reports scroll across her screen. 3 million dead. The Mars colony was rationing water. Venus had gone dark 2 weeks ago, and nobody knew if anyone there was still alive. The Concordat blockade was strangling humanity slowly. "Doctor, we're ready for the test," Bay said from across the lab. Tore her eyes away from the death count and walked to where stood beside what looked like a large metallic sphere. It was smooth and featureless, covered in equations that barely understood even though she had helped develop them. "This is it?" she asked. "This is it," confirmed. The young physicist looked exhausted. They all did. The project had consumed them for months, working in secret, working against time, working on something that might save humanity or might condemn them forever. Project Prometheus, the weapon that could kill gods. "Explain it to me one more time," said, "in simple terms." Nodded. "The ancients aren't physical anymore. They're pure consciousness uploaded into quantum substrates. That makes them powerful, but it also makes them vulnerable. They exist in a specific quantum state. If we can disrupt that state, they die." Finished. "They cease to exist across all possible quantum states," corrected. "It's worse than death. It's like they never were." Felt sick. She had become a scientist because she wanted to understand life, not destroy it. But war changed people. War made monsters of everyone. "What's the range?" she asked. "That's the problem." Pulled up a simulation. "We can't control it precisely. When we disrupt quantum states, it creates a cascade effect. One disruption leads to another, which leads to another. In simulations, we've seen it spread across entire star systems. So if we use this weapon, we could kill billions. Not just the ancients, every Concordat species in range, every living thing on every planet for light years around." Closed her eyes. This was the choice they faced: die slowly under the Concordat siege or become mass murderers. There had to be another way. There had to be. "Keep working on it," she said. "We need to find a way to limit the effect." But they all knew the truth. Time was running out. Admiral Song knew it too. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his fleet shrink day by day. They had started with 187 ships. Now he had 73. 73 ships against the thousands that remained in the Concordat fleet. "Sir, Earth Command is calling," his communications officer said. Song took the call in his ready room. Premier Han appeared on his screen. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 8 months. "Admiral, I need a realistic assessment," she said without preamble. "Can we win this?" Song had never lied to his superiors. He wasn't about to start now. "No, Madam Premier, we can't." "How long can we hold out?" "At the current rate of attrition, 6 weeks. Maybe 8 if we abandon the outer colonies and concentrate everything on defending Earth itself." Was silent for a long moment. "Doctor says her weapon is almost ready." "I've heard." Song kept his voice neutral. "Do you know what it will do?" "I do. Doctor has been very clear about the consequences." "And you're considering it anyway." "Are you telling me not to?" His voice was sharp. Song thought about that. He thought about the crews he had lost. He thought about the colonies that had gone dark. He thought about his daughter on Earth, who sent him messages every day asking when the war would be over. "I'm telling you that if you order me to use that weapon, I'll do it," he said finally. "But I want you to know what you're ordering. You'll be killing billions of innocents, civilians who never chose this war, children who don't even know humanity exists." "I know," said quietly. "Do you think I sleep anymore, Admiral? Do you think I don't see their faces every time I close my eyes?" "Then why?" "Because I took an oath to protect humanity. And right now, this is the only way I can see to do that." The call ended. Song sat alone in his ready room and wondered if there were any good choices left in the world. 2 weeks later, the decision was made. The Concordat fleet reached Earth orbit. Luna Base was bombarded from space. The moon's surface glowed red from the impacts. Over 1 million people died in the first hour. The ancients sent one final message. Surrender now or Earth will be. You have 6 hours to comply. Premier Han called an emergency meeting of what remained of Earth's government. They met in a bunker deep underground in Geneva. The walls shook from distant impacts as Concordat weapons struck military targets around the globe. "Doctor, is the weapon ready?" asked. Stood slowly. She had papers in her hand, but she didn't look at them. "Yes, but we've modified it." "How?" "We can't control the cascade effect, so we're not going to try. Instead, we're going to use it once on a single target far from any inhabited system. A demonstration." "Will that be enough to stop them?" "I don't know. But if we use it as a weapon of war, if we kill billions of Concordat civilians, we become the monsters they feared we were. We prove the ancients right." Admiral Song spoke up from his position via video feed. "The Concordat has a supply convoy 50 light-years from Earth, 17 ships, no civilian vessels. If we hit them with the weapon, the ancients will see what we can do without us committing genocide." "And if they don't stop?" someone asked. "Then we use it again," said, "and again, until they leave us alone or until we destroy them all." She looked around the room. "I won't pretend this is a good choice, but it's the only choice we have left." The vote was called. It was unanimous. Captain delivered the weapon personally. The Defiant Dawn jumped to the coordinates where the Concordat convoy was traveling through empty space. His crew was silent as they approached. Everyone knew what was about to happen. "Target locked," his weapons officer said. "Fire ordered." The quantum disruptor launched. It was a small thing, barely larger than a person. It didn't move fast. The Concordat ship saw it coming and tried to shoot it down, but their weapons passed right through it. The disruptor existed in a different quantum state, untouchable by conventional weapons. It reached the first Concordat vessel and detonated. What happened next was impossible to describe. The ship didn't explode, it didn't break apart, it simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, a solid physical object with crew and systems and mass. The next moment there was nothing, not even debris, just empty space where a ship had been. The effect spread. One ship vanished, then another, then another. 17 vessels ceased to exist in the span of 3 seconds. 17 ships and every soul aboard them erased from reality. On the bridge of the Defiant Dawn's crew watched in horror. They had just killed thousands of beings in a way that made conventional weapons look merciful. "Send the message," said quietly. Admiral Song's message went out to the ancients on all frequencies. "We have crossed a line we never wanted to cross. We have created a weapon that can destroy you, but we take no joy in this. Leave our system. Leave us alone, or we will use this weapon again, and we will keep using it until your Concordat is nothing but a memory." The response came quickly, too quickly, as if the ancients had been waiting for this moment. "Humanity, you have done something remarkable, something terrible, something necessary. We wish to speak with you, not as conquerors, but as equals." The Concordat fleet from Earth orbit. They didn't retreat slowly or make demands. They simply left, pulling back to the edge of the solar system and waiting. The siege was over. But the war wasn't finished, not yet. Captain received the message 3 days later. The ancients wanted to meet. Not in the council chamber with its thousands of watching species. A private meeting, just the ancients, Doctor, and Ambassador Park. "It could be a trap," Admiral Song warned. "It could be," agreed, "but we don't have much choice, do we?" The meeting took place on a small neutral station at the edge of human space. The station was old, built by a species that had gone extinct centuries ago. It was just a ring of metal floating in the dark, lit by distant stars. And arrived in a small shuttle. They docked and walked through empty corridors to a single room at the station's center. The 5 pillars of light were waiting for them. But something was different. The ancients' light seemed dimmer somehow, less certain. "Thank you for coming," the voice said. It was the same voice that had commanded them a year ago, but it sounded different now. Older, tired. "You asked to speak," Ambassador said carefully. "We're listening. We owe you an explanation. We owe you the truth." The blue pillar pulsed. "For 100,000 years we have told ourselves a lie. We told ourselves we were protecting the galaxy. We were not. We were making it safe, comfortable, dead." Stepped forward. "What do you mean?" "When we first achieved transcendence, we were like you, aggressive, ambitious, dangerous. We spread across the galaxy and took what we wanted. We fought wars that killed trillions. We built weapons that destroyed stars. We were glorious and terrible, and we carried scars from what we had done." The red pillar brightened. "When we finally achieved peace, we vowed never to allow another species to walk our path, never to allow the pain we had caused. We would guide, we would protect, we would prevent the suffering we had created." "So you built a cage," said. "We built a galaxy of cages," the voice admitted. "Beautiful cages, safe cages, but cages nonetheless. Every species we helped became dependent on us. They stopped growing. They stopped striving. They became content, and in their contentment they became nothing." The green pillar pulsed. "We tried to tell ourselves it was better this way, better safe than sorry, better alive and small than great and destroyed. But we were wrong. We were so very wrong." "Why tell us this now?" asked. "Because you forced us to see it. When you refused our demands, we were certain you would fail. We had seen it before. Young species who thought they were special, who thought they could resist us. They all fell. They all submitted, except you." The purple pillar grew brighter. "You did something we thought impossible. You created a weapon that threatens us. In 100,000 years of peace, no species has managed that. Do you understand what that means?" "It means you're not invincible," said. "It means we have been stagnant too. We have been so focused on preventing change that we stopped changing ourselves. We became the very thing we feared, a power that crushes innovation, that kills possibility. And we didn't even realize it until you held a weapon to our throat." Was quiet for a long moment. "You wanted us to refuse," he said slowly. "The warning, the ultimatum, the fleet, you wanted us to fight." "We hoped," the voice said, "but we could not be certain. We could not risk directly empowering you. We had to create real danger, real consequences. If you had surrendered, you would have been saved from war. But you would have been doomed to the same fate as every other species, comfortable obscurity." "And if we had lost," asked, her voice tight with anger, "if your fleet had crushed us, all those deaths would have been for nothing." "No, if you had lost while fighting, you would have died free. You would have died reaching for more. That is not nothing, Doctor, that is everything." The chamber was silent, except for the hum of the station's old systems. "You're telling us you started a war that killed millions of humans to teach us a lesson." His voice was cold. "We're telling you we gave you a chance. The only chance we could give without breaking the system we had built, and you took it. You survived. You thrived. You reminded the galaxy that the ancients can be challenged." The 5 pillars pulsed together. "Already, the Concordat is changing. Species that have been passive for centuries are asking questions. They see what you did and wonder why they can't do the same. They remember what it means to want more. You have broken 100,000 years of peace, Captain, and you have given us something we thought we had lost forever." "What's that?" asked. "Hope. Hope that the galaxy can be more than what we made it. Hope that there is still room for growth, for change, for glory, and for mistakes. Hope that we were wrong and that the pain of growth is worth the alternative." Premier Han appeared on a communication screen that one of them had brought. She had been listening to everything. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Do we go back to war? Do we submit? Do we stand alone?" "We offer you a choice," the ancients said. "Join the Concordat as equals, not subjects. Help us rebuild what we broke. Help us teach the galaxy to want again, to strive again, to be more than comfortable. or refuse and go your own way with our blessing. Either way, there will be no more ultimatums, no more guardians, no more cages. Looked at. They had all paid the price for this moment. They had all lost people they loved. They all carried scars from the war. We'll join, said finally, but on our terms. No oversight, no guidance. We share what we know, learn from others, and yes, probably make terrible mistakes, but they'll be our mistakes. Agreed, the voice said. The meeting ended. The three humans walked back to their shuttle in silence. When they were safely away from the station, finally spoke. Do you believe them? She asked. Does it matter? Replied. Whether they planned this or not, whether they're telling the truth or not, the result is the same. We're free. The galaxy is changing. That's what we fought for. At what cost? Asked quietly. 3 million dead, entire colonies destroyed, a weapon that can unmake reality. Was it worth it? Looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Admiral Song was repairing his fleet. Engineers were rebuilding the colonies. Families were mourning their dead. The scars of the war would last for generations. Ask me in 100 years, he said. Right now, I just know we survived, and we're still human. 1 month later, Doctor and Bay stood in their laboratory on the belt station. Between them was the last remaining quantum disruptor. They had the plans, the specifications, everything needed to build more. We could keep it, said, as insurance, in case the ancients change their minds. Shook her head. If we keep it, someone will eventually use it. That's what weapons do. They demand to be used. She initiated the deletion sequence. The plans vanished from every database. The specifications were erased. The quantum disruptor itself was broken down to its base components. Some weapons should never exist, said, watching the device come apart. Not even in memory. The ancients warned us we were catastrophic, said. They were right, weren't they? We became exactly what they feared. Maybe, admitted. But maybe the galaxy needed a catastrophe, not the kind the ancients imagined, but a different kind. The kind that breaks old systems and forces change. On Earth, Premier Han announced the terms of the peace to a crowd of millions. There was no celebration. The cost had been too high for celebration. But there was relief. There was hope. There was the knowledge that humanity had faced impossible odds and survived. Admiral Song stood on the bridge of his repaired flagship and looked at his reduced fleet. He would spend the rest of his life rebuilding what had been lost, training new crews, remembering the ones who had died. It was a heavy burden, but someone had to carry it. Captain returned to the Defiant Dawn. His ship had survived the war, though it bore the scars of every battle. He ran his hand along the damaged hull and felt the weight of everything that had happened. Sir, his pilot asked, where to now? Smiled. For the first time in a year, he felt something like peace. Forward, he said, always forward. In the council chamber, the 5 pillars of light dimmed for the first time in. Around them, the Concordat species buzzed with activity. Questions were being asked. Changes were being demanded. The comfortable stagnation of 100,000 years was ending. It was terrifying, it was chaotic, it was messy and uncertain and full of risk. It was alive. The galaxy had been given a warning, and the consequences had indeed been devastating, but not in the way anyone expected. The devastation wasn't the end of civilization. It was the end of comfortable sleep. It was the beginning of something new. And in the emptiness of space, between the stars where humans now traveled freely, the future waited. Uncertain, dangerous, full of possibility. Exactly as it should be.